Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here, and we will respect your time and go ahead and get started. My name is Joy Hoffmeister, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and I want to first thank all of you for your leadership demonstrated and sacrifices made to provide Oklahoma students with educational needs during this pandemic. In these truly unprecedented times, we have certainly all been tested, and the compassion and leadership shown by each of you has minimized the disruption for students and families, and actually your teams as well. This last year has been one of great tests to our limits and resources, but it has also shown us that through leadership, resilience, shared partnerships and resources, we can and we will get through these tough times. Today, we are excited to talk with you about another opportunity that has been made available through the federal relief measures to minimize disruptions and allow for the preparation, response, and planning for COVID-19 and how it has impacted students. So while we have always worked in partnership to enable equitable services, we're provided and continued throughout that coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security, or CARES Act. This new program we are discussing today is through the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. Certainly, none of us are strangers to acronyms in education. You may often hear us refer to the federal law as CRRSA Act or the CRRSA Act. And it was signed into law on December the 27th, 2020, and added another $81.88 billion to the Education Stabilization Fund, including an additional $4 billion, specifically $4,053,060,000 for the Governor's Emergency Relief Fund, or GEAR Fund. So out of the GEAR Fund, Congress dedicated $2.75 billion specifically to provide emergency assistance to students and teachers in eligible non-public schools. This portion is known as the Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools, or EANS, program, and it will be administered by the Oklahoma State Department of Education, or OSDE. Oklahoma's share of these funds is just over $30 million and is required to be used for services and assistance to help non-public schools safely reopen, measures and effectively address learning loss that has occurred, and take action to mitigate the spread and the impact of COVID-19 on students and families in your schools. To facilitate the delivery of services and assurances through these programs today, OSDE will be releasing an application to participating non-public schools. The application seeks to obtain general information about your school, establish the eligibility requirements to participate in the program, and gather information to allow OSDE to target the services and assistance as required by the CRRSA Act. Also today, OSDE will be releasing a frequently asked questions document that will help answer specific questions that you have about the application and your participation in the EANS program. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Naomi Ward, OSDE's non-public school ombudsman, tongue twister right before lunch, who will guide us through the requirements of the EANS program, allowable services and assistance, and discuss the timeline for the allocations and services made available, and to answer any questions that you have. So again, thank you for all that you have done during these unprecedented times. And now we will turn it over to Naomi.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Superintendent Hoffmeister and the Oklahoma State Department of Education, I would like to welcome you to the Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools Program webinar. My name again is Naomi Ward, and I am a program specialist in the Office of Federal Programs, and I am also the State Non-Public School Ombudsman. Today, we will be giving you an overview of the EANS program. We are going to start off by going over the coronavirus relief funding, then an overview of the EANS program, the program requirements, eligibility requirements, the application and agreement, allowable uses under EANS, the timeline, and we will end with some time for questions. Under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, known as the CARES Act, the following funds and programs were made available. Governor's Emergency Education Relief Year 1 funds, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency ESSER 1 funds, Equitable Services Requirement, and the Payment Protection Program, PPP. Under the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2021, CRRSA, the following funds and programs have been made available. The Governor's Emergency Education Relief Year 2 funds, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief ESSER 2 funds, the Payment Protection Program, PPP, and the Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools, EANS. The EANS program, which is authorized under the Year 2 funds, will be administered by the Oklahoma State Department of Education. The United States Department of Education, USDE, will award EANS funds by formula to each governor, who must then approve the certification and agreement. The governor designates the state education agency, the SEA, the Oklahoma State Department of Education, to administer the program and access to the EANS funds. The EANS program serves to provide services and/or assistance to non-public schools that enroll low-income students and that have been most impacted by COVID-19. The Oklahoma State Department of Education may provide services, assistance, or reimbursement to the non-public schools for allowable services and/or assistance. The EANS program does not have any equitable services requirements. However, the requirements will continue to apply to the CARES Act programs. Here we have listed some of the program requirements. The Oklahoma State Department of Education may reimburse allowable COVID-19 related services or assistance that occurred on or after March the 13th of 2020. Please keep in mind that the expenses may not have already been reimbursed with federal funds or PPP funds. Non-public schools may utilize the equipment and supplies purchased for authorized purposes through September the 30th of 2023. Control of funds for services and assistance provided, materials, equipment, property shall remain with the Oklahoma State Department of Education. Services and assistance must be secular, neutral, and non-ideological. Next, we're going to move on to non-public school eligibility requirements. In order to participate in the EANS funds, a non-public school must be a nonprofit. CRRSA defines non-public as a non-public elementary or secondary school. ESEA section 810919 defines elementary and secondary school and specifies that they must be nonprofit. The non-public school must also be accredited, licensed, or otherwise approved to operate in accordance with state law. They must have existed prior to March the 13th of 2020. The non-public school must not have applied for a PPP loan after the 27th of 2020, 27th of December, excuse me. The non-public school must also submit the Oklahoma State Department's application and agreement. And the non-public school must also comply with the program assurances as well as the requirements. The following information will be required on the application: the non-public school name and the non-public school county code. Non-public schools can register for a code through the Oklahoma State Department of Education If you will please contact me at naomi.ward@sde.ok.gov. I will provide you with a county code or get you registered for one. The non-public school will also need to provide the contact information. The total school enrollment on October the 1st, 2019 and October the 1st, 2020. The number and percentage of low-income students on October the 1st, 2019 and October the 1st, 2020 will also be provided. The non-public school will provide, should be established prior to March the 13th of 2020. The non-public school cannot have been a recipient of PPP after December the 27th of 2020. The non-public school must be able to provide the specific impact that the pandemic has had on the school, as well as a description and budget of services and assistance that is being requested. So the application and agreement will be sent out through email following this webinar, and it will also be available on the Oklahoma State Department of Education's website under federal programs in the news and noteworthy section. So if you do not receive an email from me and are unable to locate the application on our website, if you will email me, I will send you a copy. With that being said, I also would like to urge you to try and submit the application at your earliest convenience so that the allocation amounts can be made available as quickly as possible to ensure that our non-public schools are able to make the best decisions possible in assisting our students and the non-public school staff. Non-public schools receiving services or assistance shall use the EANS funds to address educational disruptions resulting from the pandemic for the following: improvement of ventilation systems, redevelopment of instructional plans for remote or hybrid learning, supplies to sanitize, disinfect, and clean school facilities, personal protective equipment, PPE, training and professional development for staff on proper sanitization, uses of PPE, and minimizing the spread of infectious diseases. Physical barriers to facilitate the proper social distancing. Materials, supplies, or equipment recommended by the CDC for reopening and operating school facilities. Expanding the capacity to administer COVID testing while monitoring and suppressing the virus. Educational technology, leasing sites and spaces for the purpose of ensuring social distancing. Reasonable transportation costs, and initiating and maintaining education and support services, remote learning assistance, and addressing learning losses. Reimbursements are allowable under the EANS program. Allowable reimbursements for all direct services or assistance that were listed on the previous two slides, with the exception of improvements to ventilation systems, including windows, except for portable air purification systems, which may be reimbursed, staff training and professional development on sanitization, the use of PPE, and minimizing the spread of COVID-19, developing instructional plans, including curriculum development for remote or hybrid learning or to address learning loss, initiating and maintaining education and support services or assistance for remote or hybrid learning or to address learning loss, any expenses reimbursed through a loan guaranteed under the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, prior to December the 27th of 2020. Reimbursements must be necessary, reasonable, and within the allowable uses. With that being said, if there are any questions regarding allowability, please do not hesitate to contact me. February the 23rd, today, we will release the application after the webinar. On March the 2nd, we will have a repeat of the EANS program webinar. On March the 12th, the applications will be due. The applications will be sent to naomi.ward@sde.ok.gov with the email subject line EANS, EANS. This information will be available on the application as well. On March the 8th, there will be a budget training webinar. A repeat of the budget training webinar will be presented on March the 29th. Allocations and budgets will be due between the 19th of March and the 12th of April. Requests for assistance, services, and/or reimbursements will then be due the 12th of April through the end of the fiscal year on June the 30th. The EANS funds are on the same fiscal timeline as all other federal funds. Unexpended funds will roll over to the next fiscal year. Fiscal years in which we operate begin July the 1st, and they end June 30th of the following year. And now we are going to open it up for any questions that you all may have.
When will allocation decisions be made?
So the allocations will be provided after we receive the applications. Will we be able to get a copy of this presentation? Yes. This presentation will be posted on our website.
Expenses incurred from the March of 20 date to what end date?
It will be March the 13th of 2020.
That's the start date. What about the end date of the period?
June. So all of the reimbursements, they will need to be submitted to us by June the 30th of this fiscal year. So it would be of 2021.
Okay. You had mentioned the state as SEA retains ownership of the asset when it's a reimbursement for training personnel, something like that. How does that work?
The reimbursement process. So you would go through the application process, and then once the application process is complete, you will submit. So there will be an allocation and budget due date, which is between the 9th of March and April the 12th, where you will submit all that information. And then after that, you will submit a request for assistance, services, and reimbursements. Does that make sense?
Kind of. Like if we bought laptops and it was approved for reimbursement, they would remain under state management, or how does that work when you've got something that you bought?
Correct. So the laptops would be the property of the Oklahoma State Department of Education.
And would remain operationally with the school?
Correct.
Okay.
There was a really good question about the SAMs or the DUNS number. We recently found out via a webinar from the USDE, United States Department of Education, that the private schools, the non-public schools, do not need to obtain a DUNS number or a SAMs number. So that is not something you will need to worry about.
Naomi, could you clarify the relationship of what looks like the parts of the application process? There's an application due on the 12th, and there are budgets and due in between March and April, and it looks like documentation due April to June. Is that correct, that these are all parts of a larger set of documents related to one application?
Correct. So the first process that we will need you to complete is due on the 12th of March. So you will complete your application and submit it to the email address, my email address. And then after that, you will need to attend the budget training webinar And during that webinar, we will provide information on how you will create your budgets, how you will use your allocations, and how requests for assistance services and all that stuff. So the webinar on March the 8th, there will be another link that I will send out to you. If for some reason you do not receive that link, just let me know, send me an email, and I will get that link to you. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we have another question. Are there any non-discrimination clauses that must be agreed to in order to receive funds? I don't believe so. The only thing would be that the uses of the funds would be for items that are non-ideological, that are neutral, and that are secular. The website to get the information, it's going to be on the federal programs part of the SDE website. So you will go onto sde.ok.gov, and at the very top, there will be a toolbar, and you will click on services, and then click on federal programs, and you will be at the homepage of the federal program site. If you can't find it though, just email me and I will send you a copy.
Naomi, one other question on the allowable uses. The last slide that ruled out some of the things on the previous slides. Mm-hmm. Is this suggesting that training faculty to develop like online curriculum delivery or something like that would be ruled out for this particular program?
I am going to have to get back to you on that question. I can't see who is asking that question. Would you, let's see, sorry, could you provide me with your name, or if you could shoot me an email with that question?
Yes, I'll send you an email. It's Gwen Hackler.
Perfect. Rachel, your question, I will email you the answer to your question as well in regards to the technology position. Will stay in school grants programs be available for families again in participation in stay in school grants? Disqualify a school from PPP from CARES 2? I don't believe so, but I am not sure about this question. I don't know if any of my leadership on here can answer that question.
Yeah, Naomi, this is Brad Clark, General Counsel for the State Department of Education. Happy to jump in and try and assist if I can here. The stay in school grants and opportunities obviously were a part of the Gear 1. I'm not sure if there's any indication at this point whether those will be continued outside of the EANS program under the Gear 2 options, the non-EANS portion. So I don't know the answer to that at this time. On the non-discrimination question from earlier, you're right, there are not non-discrimination requirements in there other than what you covered in the slide about secular or neutral, which are very clearly outlined in the federal act here.
Thank you, Brad.
Sure.
Heather asked, if you purchased an air purifier back in 2020 and want reimbursement, is this something you can ask for? So as long as it was not paid with federal funds or the PPP funds, and it was after the date of March the 13th, 2020, then yes. If we had to replace AC units for air purification, how would that function with reimbursements? I will have to get back to you on that question, and I will email you. Okay. We paid our staff who were out for COVID in January. We got a tax credit for this. Are we not eligible for the EANS funds now? I believe that has no impact on applying for your EANS funds. If there is anybody that can confirm that, as long as you did not apply for the PPP loan after December the 27th of 2020, you should be good to go.
Naomi, I think that's absolutely right. To the question earlier about the ventilation systems, if I understand that correctly and recalling the slide, you can do the ventilation systems, but it has to be through direct services or assistance. It cannot be a reimbursement, I think is the distinction that would be necessary there on that. I hope that helps. And if I didn't understand the question, of course, we can circle back with whoever asked that.
Can you define what direct services is in this case?
Yeah, it would literally be the OSDE either coming on site or through a contractor performing those services directly, as opposed to the other option would be to reimburse the non-public school directly.
Okay, thank you.
Question about eligibility. The new PPP required basically that you lost money compared to the previous period. Is there any similar eligibility requirement for these funds?
I don't believe so. Once again, if there's somebody that can confirm that.
I'm not sure of the answer to that one. We can certainly find out and circle back.
I will get back to you on that one.
Thank you.
I do know the question that you asked in the box, the federal financial assistance. So this is not considered federal financial assistance. The EANS program, the EANS funds. Can this be used to compensate staff who is not paid due to school closure? It's to my knowledge, after the webinar that from USDE that we cannot compensate staff for with the EANS funds. Dr. Morrison, I will also get back with you on that question about the aid.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Do the number of students on free and reduced meals affect or limit the assistance available? No. Am I correct that all matters involving EANS will flow through OSDE and not? And I am the contact at the Oklahoma State Department of Education. I think I've talked to most of you all. So if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to reach out to me. Yes, I will also email you, Ms. Goldsworthy.
Naomi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I think that someone may have asked this question and maybe I just missed it, but someone I know asked about hiring, because we were looking at, is it possible for us to hire an aide for learning loss for students? Because we're seeing, because of the COVID impact and because kids have to quarantine, come back, it would be really helpful to be able to hire an aide to kind of track them a little better, or hire a technology staff member to help oversee the online learning components that many of the schools have had to implement, simply because our teachers are not used to the type of technology that we're having to use now to go back and forth. And so, yes, if you can kind of ask about that, I guess, and let us know. We're just trying to make sure that when we apply, we're using the funds exactly as they're supposed to be used for, obviously, but making sure, hey, what boundaries do we have and what do we need to make sure that we can do to help our students learn more effectively? So that's kind of what I was checking on.
Absolutely. I will get all the questions from the chat box and I will send them out to the email list that I have so that everybody has the answers to these as well. You also include me in the email for whether a new technology training. Yes. Perfect. All the questions that have been asked, I will email everybody the answers and whatever I can find. Do you all have any other questions?
I'm going to throw this one out there. Can you use some of the funds for like an upgrade to your playground equipment for students to be able to play outside more? They say that being outside is better for them. Is that something along the lines that we can use, or is that just not allowed at all?
That is also something I'm going to look into,
Okay.
and I will add that when I send all the information out.
Okay. And one more question, actually. It seems like we kind of all have a same recurring themes, which is good. I mean, that kind of means that we're all on the same page overall, which is nice. If we had to purchase a vehicle so that when we take kids off site for like we do college and VOTEC tours with mask and social distancing, we needed to purchase a vehicle that would allow the students to sit further apart for safety precautions for COVID. Is that something that could be covered as well? So that's another question that I'm going to throw out there too.
Perfect. And if you all have any other questions that you would like me to research, please put them in the chat box and I will get them and I'll research the questions and then I'll hopefully be able to provide you with an answer really soon. Okay, so we have a question. It appears that retooling curriculum for online learning and to teach with required social distancing is in the except category, not allowed. Is that correct? I would say that that is an allowable. That is allowable. Yeah, under the EANS program. So the slide that you are referring to, the one that talked about the ones that were not allowable, those are for reimbursement purposes. But the slides at the very beginning, the 2 slides prior to that, are allowable expenses under the EANS program. Fencing and construction costs to create safe outdoor spaces. That is also something we are going to have to look into and get back to you on. You are affiliated with receives a PPP loan after December the 27th. Does that disqualify you? I am not sure about this question. Is there somebody on leadership that could answer this? If the church receives a PPP, does that disqualify the private school that they are associated with?
I think it's going to be based on the applicant and what the name of the applicant is when it's submitted to us. So it may be a case-by-case situation that we have to look at.
That actually, I've got an answer for that one. Like, for instance, my church pays the payroll for all of our schools' teachers. We have 8 schools, and I work for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And we oversee the 8 schools where the payroll function form, the teachers actually work for us. We applied for the original PPP for our schools on behalf to pay the teachers. So I don't know if the school is an independent school from the church and those kind of things. So that's where it gets, like you said, it's kind of a case by case, I think.
Thank you. We have a question about the total number of schools that are going to be included in the allocation amount. So the quicker we can get all of our applications back, the sooner we'll be able to determine those allocation amounts. So we will not know how many schools until we get all the applications. can we reimburse our substitute budget? That's another question that I'm going to look into and make sure I have the right answer, and then I will let you know. Yes, that's a great idea. I will definitely have a frequently asked questions. I will try to continue to add on questions that I receive from our non-public schools onto that document and share that out to everybody.
Naomi, are you able to share what the allocation formula is or will be for allocation? Is it based on per pupil, or is there a different formula that's going to be taking into account free and reduced numbers?
That is a question I'm going to have to ask our leadership. As far as the calculation methods, is that something that we will be able to share out?
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on this earlier. I think there was a question, I may have missed it at this point, but I think the question was relating to low income enrollment and whether that will affect the services or assistance. As you said, the answer to that is no, but I did want to take that moment to point out there is a requirement in the statute that says the OSDE shall target assistance and services to those schools who serve and enroll low-income students and who are most negatively impacted by the emergency. And so that is a part of that process of collecting the information. You will see on the application, there's a short narrative to describe the negative impacts that you all have sustained as a result of the emergency. So I hope that helps to answer that question, but I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last part, but we can come back to that. Yes, it's going to be based on your overall enrollment, but there is a requirement that there is a targeting requirement in there about schools that enroll low-income students and who are most negatively impacted. That will also be addressed in those FAQs that will come out shortly.
So we have another question. Am I understanding that we can both be reimbursed for past expenses and receive assistance for future budget needs? That is correct. So on the application that's going to be sent out, we have a few examples or ways that you can determine low income status. And so after you look at the application, if it's unclear, just contact me and I'll help you figure out how to best determine the low income students at your school. So just in case anybody missed it at the very beginning, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website. I will also be sending out the applications after the webinar. If you don't receive it, please contact me and I will send you a copy, or it is available on our website. We will also have the frequently asked questions that is available on the website. I can also send that out through the email, the one that that our superintendent mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. And I'm going to wait a few seconds to see if we have any more questions. If for some reason you weren't able to ask questions on the webinar today, please feel free to email me. You can email me at any time with any kind of questions that you may have, and I will try to get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Okay, I think we don't have any more questions, so I'm going to move on to our contact information. The contact information page Once again, my name is Naomi Ward. I will be your contact. My phone number is 405-522-3218. That is my work phone. I think a lot of you all have another phone number that is my cell phone number, and you are more than welcome to call me if you need to on that. My email is also naomi.ward@sde.ok.gov. So once again, I am going to be sending out the application and the frequently asked questions. So if you do not receive it, please contact me. And I look forward to working with all of you all. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you all soon.